So today I'm talking about a Ford Focus and a transmission that's overheating, some of the common causes and fixes for it. And you might get a message, transmission overheating, stop safely. And this is fairly common inside the Ford Focus, especially if you're like going stop and go and in heavy traffic and going slightly slow up a hill. A lot of Ford Focus drivers report this issue. You know, you're stuck in a heavy traffic jam or something along these lines, then that can happen. Quite often it'll clear up if you take off and you're driving down the freeway or something doing 50, 60, 70 miles an hour, then the issue won't come back. But if you are in heavy traffic and this happens, then that's a known issue with the Ford Focus. But I'm going to go over some of the common causes of why a transmission is overheating in the Ford Focus. And the number one thing is going to be the fluid. You want to be sure that it's been changed out regularly. You have to Google for your particular year, but usually it's like 30 to 50,000 miles. Again, Google that for your particular year of Ford Focus to be sure. But if it gets old and dirty, the fluid, or if it gets low, then there could be an issue. There's also a filter inside of there that filters out gunk, and if that gets clogged up, the fluid level might be correct, but the fluid might not be circulating correctly, so there might be an issue there. And many Ford Focus transmissions now are sealed, so you can't check the level, but if you can, then that's good. You can go out there and look and see if it's correct or not and see how dirty it is. But if it is sealed and you do have high mileage on the transmission, then it might just be time to go get the fluid replaced and the filter. So the first thing to go and check is the transmission fluid. And the next thing is going to be the radiator. There'll be two lines going into the radiator from the transmission, and this is how the transmission gets cooled, is by circulating fluid through it back into the transmission, the same as the engine. And these two lines will be carrying the transmission fluid through the system into the radiator, back out, and cooling the transmission as it goes. If there's any clogs or anything happens here, then it can cause the transmission to overheat. So you could go and look. Usually if there's an issue here, there's a leak or a drip somewhere. So you can look underneath and try to look at these transmission lines and see if there's any leak going into the radiator or any fluids leaking that might be causing an issue, because that's the main way that the transmission is cooled down. So the second thing to check would be the radiator and the coolant lines going into the transmission. And the next thing that you go and check is going to be a sensor. There's different sensors on the transmission. It'll depend, again, on the year of the Ford Focus. Since the newer they get, the more sensors they seem to get. But the onboard computer is reading all this data and information from these sensors. So if one of these sensors go bad, then it could be reporting back that there's an issue going on when there isn't. And so the transmission might not be having no problem, but the sensors failed and it's reporting bad data back to the onboard computer, which thinks that there's a problem. So the next thing to check would be if one of these sensors on the transmission has failed. And the next thing to check would be the transmission control module. It'll be located like on the bottom of the transmission. Usually it can vary, but usually located somewhere along those lines on the bottom. And if this fails, it could cause different problems, including overheating. You know, quite often it will also have like shifting problems or things like this, but it could just vary on the problems that it could cause. But one of the issues if this does fail is that it can cause transmission overheating. So the next thing to check would be the transmission control module. And the last thing on the list is that the transmission has just failed, that a gear has gone bad or something is wrong inside of there that is just causing issues, and it's just time to replace the transmission. And replacing a transmission is an expensive thing, so be sure to get a professional opinion on what's going on before you go about trying to replace it. But the last thing on the list is going to be that the transmission is just failed. And so that's basically it. I just wanted to give a real quick brief overview of what you could look out for if you have a Ford Focus and the transmission's overheating. If you have anything to add, please comment down below. If you have any questions, ask me and I'll try to answer them. If this video helps you, please click like, please click subscribe, and have a good day.